Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I am Kenda Ruth, here to answer your questions on marriage and midlife crisis. I am going live today in 3 places. I'm going live on YouTube, and I'm going live in 2 places on Facebook, a private group. If you are in the private group, your comments are safe, and I'm going live on a public business page. If you comment from that page, your friends might be notified, and your comments could be made public and read by others who search later. So I'm going to go and let you know through the comments which group you're in on Facebook. So I'm going to post a comment, and also on that comment I will be putting my link to my free course, Understanding Midlife Crisis, so that if you're interested and you haven't joined, you can sign up for that. I created that course just to help you get through the initial whys and give you some basic answers to this crisis. So hold on. I grabbed the wrong one for the wrong site. So just a moment. Okay, it's taking a minute to come through. And there. Okay, so public comment posted. And private side posted. We have about 10 to get through today, so I will take any that I don't get to today and work on single question videos and post later throughout the week as I have time. I would have gotten more or them sooner last week, so I'm sorry it took so long, but I recorded them and then there was no sound. Something had gone wrong with the sound on my iPad when recording, and so I just had to re-record them. I hadn't discovered it till a while later when I went upstairs to do my editing. So, and then it took me a while to figure out how to get the sound back. I don't know how I did it. So sometimes it's just technical things. So, if I use a name, for those of you who are not familiar or aware, it's because I've been given permission to use that name in the submission form. And feel free to ask questions as I go along. If I have time or can, I will be checking those comments as well. Our first question, we have Carol. Carol is a left behind and forward moving spouse whose bomb drop is October of 2021. Date of marriage 2014. She has a clinging boomerang and a high energy replayer. And Carol, I'm not actually, this isn't something I'm versed in. She says, I saw my husband with drugs. Flocka, I believe he's using, and I don't know if you said Flocka, I believe, or Flocka, I believe he's using. So I'm not sure if you're guessing that it's Flocka or knowing that it's Flocka. Will the addiction stop after midlife crisis? So a few things. First thing, I'm not versed. Well, I was going to say well versed. I'm not versed, period, in addiction, and Flocka is a more recent street drug. It is extremely dangerous, so I want you to be very careful. When overdosing, they can get hook-like strength, from what I read, and there can be more suicides, more injuries to others. So I want you to be very careful. I don't really want you to be around him if you know that he's on this, at that time at least. But will his addiction stop? So the question I have, and it isn't a question for you, this is a general question that I would ask of somebody who specializes and knows about this, is Flocka one of those substances where you can use it and not be addicted, and you can use it and get addicted? So using it doesn't have to mean he's addicted. So will his use stop after MLC? Will his continuing use of it mean that he is then addicted if he's not now? Those questions are things to think about. Because if he is addicted, let's say he's addicted, midlife crisis or not, that doesn't go away because his crisis goes away. In fact, that becomes the crisis. If you have somebody who is an addict, an active addict, and they're in a midlife crisis, but let's say the midlife crisis came along and they became an addict or they returned to active addiction, that becomes the driving force and the problem within. That becomes the thing to solve. And then we'll deal with the crisis. So I had a friend, well, someone I had met through, we were both going through this at the same time and we talked regularly. And she's one of the examples I think about when I think about those who get stuck and those in Sears who have a psychotic break. Her husband had been sober for 20 years and he was a member of AA and had been, and they were extremely active in AA. I think he became sober before they met, or at least before they were married. And for the first 2 years or so, he was a clinging boomerang. Or, yeah, he was a clinging boomerang. And then it just changed. She thinks that he started to use again. And he might have started before that. And then she thinks he went on to other things other than alcohol. And she found out about an alienator finally. Eventually, he just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. She found out for a while he was living with his mom and the alienator now together. And then at one point, his mom didn't even know where he was. And it's been over 10 years probably since I've spoken to her. It was complete vanish and a complete breakdown. He had been, just as many of you know, he'd been a father who had been involved in his children's lives. It wasn't like now he became a bad dad. It was complete abandonment. I think the kids were 6 or 7 and 13, but it was complete. And the crisis began and he was still doing that involvement. The first 2 years, we were seeing a normal midlife crisis. And given the hindsight, relieved now that he'd been in this norm. When I see the rest of them, like, oh, that's normal. Phew. He fell off. It was just like took a dive down the deep end and a full breakdown. Disappeared. Think it seemed to fall completely back into an addiction. The addiction. If you are an addict, the addiction is the driving force. It is the presenting problem, and it is that problem that needs to be dealt with. So, for another analogy, consider that you have an injury and you are bleeding and you are not breathing and you don't have a heartbeat. You're not spurting blood, but you're not breathing, you don't have a heartbeat. You're clinically dead because you don't have a heartbeat. You're not, your heart isn't beating, you're not breathing. So do you do CPR or stop the bleeding? You have to do CPR. You do CPR first, because if you don't get them breathing and a heartbeat going, they're dead anyway, bleeding or not. Same thing here. The addiction is the thing you must treat. So I can't tell you about the stopping of it. I can tell you that if that's not fixed, this underlying MLC is now going to be an underlying thing going on. Now, is he addicted or not? Like I said, I've never been in a drug culture or drug world, but I've been alive long enough that I know I've had friends who have had pasts with that. And I know some who have done hard drugs and been able to stop without all of that issue that we always associate. I have a friend who, she finally did divorce her husband, and their son became an addict and had to go through rehab, but I don't know that dad did. He'd been able to do it recreationally and then not do it recreationally. Not that I think that's good. I think it's terribly frightening, and look what it brought onto the child who wasn't able to maintain that at only a recreational status. So is it, I guess that's the term, recreationally. Is it only that, or is it going to become an addiction? Is it already? Those are the things to think of, because if he doesn't become an addict and he is able to stop, that may not be the same level of challenge. Probably wouldn't. So that's just something to think about. Now, Carol, the second piece of your question, I believe that's what I answered in the single video that I put out last week, because I think you put this question out before that video came out. If not, let me know if you have more questions about that piece of it. Okay, We're going to move on to number 2. And we have Jenny. Jenny's bomb drop was September of 2020. Date of marriage, 2002. She has a boomerang and a high energy replayer. Jenny says that there's been multiple false starts, vilification, and anxiety were increasing before he broke up with me a month ago. So I'm assuming the month ago is one of those false starts. So he threatened to email my family his account of an incident from 3.5 years ago, which would have been a year and a half or so before bomb drop. Okay. 3.5 years ago, when I didn't agree to meet in 2 days as he wanted, I had told him that I could meet in a week. And honestly, I don't get the details of that because in a marriage, I'm just confused by it. So it's more about him going into the past, which is a recent past, but the past, and using it against you. He sent a nasty email to my family and church leaders. And that also, tells me a little bit more, I'm going to assume, about your religious background also. Because I'm Lutheran, and sending an email to the church leaders, it would just be, I don't think, well, Chuck just wouldn't think of that anyway, but it's not something that's done. But I know that there are denominations where that has a lot more power. His account is one-sided, of course. I've done everything to make up for what happened. I've taken more than my share of the blame. I'm hurt that he's going to scorched earth and that he would hurt me by embarrassing me with my family. So I'm going to stop there for a moment. An MLCer will do whatever they can to get the obstacle out of their way. You're the obstacle. Okay, scorched earth or not, it's like this desperation in them to just get out of my way and get me so that I can keep going on this path, because it's an urge. It's a compulsion to escape and avoid, basically. 2 days before he broke up, the one just now a month ago, he told a friend that I'd never been such a good wife. I'm assuming that that's the breakup a month ago, because you use the term breakup. He didn't say 2 days before bomb drop. But I think he's in replay. Yes. He is an escape and avoid. I'm trying to figure out how to stand for my marriage when he's crossing every line possible. So a few things. First thing, you have to, when you stand for your marriage, you do it for you. Determine what you want, what you think is possible, what you think is probable even. And then, so you can do it weighing the risk. For the first thing, I believe in standing in a few different ways at a few different times. In the beginning, you stand with a grace period, or for a grace period, or in a grace period. Standing is not about, I am doing this because I have made the decision to stand for my marriage. I have made the decision that I want to reconcile and I do not want a divorce. That's not it. Now, of course, many of you are really doing it, but here's what I want you to think about at that point. For the first at least 12 months, I am standing while I heal. And what standing means at that point is I am not going to make a decision to divorce. I'm not going to make a decision to end this. Yeah, I know they're making a part, but I'm not going to make my decision in it. Even though you'll follow what the courts require if they've done it. Even though you may be forced legally to take action. But this is here. Not here. Not the legal action that you're taking, that you have to do to protect yourself. Because you can be a stander, and that's wanting reconciliation, wanting to undo a divorce, I guess. Standing for the grace is when I am healed. Sorry, the phone is really close to me, which is why I get so loud. You stand until you are healed, or at a level of healing where you feel more emotionally stable, you have gotten your bearings, you're more detached, you can think clearly, you are not in a state where it's not good for you to make that kind of important life-changing decision. Even though, yet I know part of the decision is being made for you, sort of. That was one of the things that bothered me, and I know it bothers so many of you, is this divorce was one-sided in the sense that I wasn't given a choice. And one of the things I said was, no, I take my choice back. The courts might not be able to stop it, but I am still allowed to say no. I'm not only am I allowed to say no, I'm allowed to say I understand what the court is saying, but I am not going to sign this as though I am agreeing to it. And I even told my lawyer, I asked her if she would be able to sign it in my for me, so that it was, I don't agree with this. I understand it's happening. I don't want to lose out on, say, if I don't sign it, I don't get my, my equity out of the house or that sort of thing. But that was my statement, is I don't agree with this. And I wanted to be able to make it. So I don't want you making the decision. You say, how am I going to stand for my marriage when he's crossing every line? Right now, I know you're a year and a half in, but so much is happening. I want you to take a step back and think about the grace and where you are. Think about the grace period. This isn't the grace I talk about for others. This is a grace period for you, where it means you don't have to make a decision right now. You just, similar to the grace period after college, where you don't have to repay your loans for a year. You're allowed to get your footing, get a job, get some income coming in. Right now, I just want you to give yourself some breathing room. I don't have to do that now. I don't have to think about it that right now. I don't have to end it now. There are some things legally, if they've started the paperwork, or if you have, because you needed to protect yourself, you have to do. But on the emotional divorce side, I'm not making a decision about that right now. Then you're trying to stand for your marriage when he's crossing every line possible. I want you to understand the timeline and the process of MSC and what happens to you. They betray. They do horrible things to us. And if we don't accept that that's going to happen, then we're going to make it worse on ourselves. We're going to become more disappointed in them. You haven't lived up to my standards. You haven't lived up to my expectations. And then there's resentment, frustration, anger. It's harder for us to forgive, because these are all things that are penting up in our emotions rather than keeping us calmer and more emotionally stable. So I want you to work on getting yourself to a place where you can be that emotionally stable, because he's going to cross every line possible. He's going to. And then he's going to confuse you, because he's going to cycle. You said that he's had multiple false starts. If he's had multiple starts, he's not a boomerang, he's a clinging boomerang. So he is a boomerang, because that's tight, but he's a clinging boomerang most likely. You're going to get mixed messages. You're going to get fears of abandonment. He's going to come and go, or try and come and go. He's going to get cycling. And so how do you do that when you get your hopes and hopes and hopes and hopes? Because I want you to be here. I want you to realize that he cycles. So when he seems better, it's not that you don't trust him in the sense of you're not being trustworthy. I think you're lying to me. When a person lies, it means it is an intentional untruth or an intentional deception. Somebody can be telling something that isn't true, but it's not true because they aren't aware. So an MLCer may come home with the most genuine of intentions. And yet tomorrow, not just 2 months from now, but even tomorrow, Chuck was a rapid cycler. They may change their mind. Or they get afraid and start to feel less certain of the mind they made up yesterday. And now they're like, I don't know what I want. Or Chuck said one time he changed his mind 50 times in 50 minutes. Freaked him out. And had I not been understanding of MLC and accepting of it, and I had, in 50 minutes he couldn't show me that, but let's say that it had been over days and I'd seen that. Had I not understood it, I would have been riding that roller coaster with him. My detachment helps me to be here instead. And that's what I want to get for you, because how do you stand for your marriage when they're doing it? Is you detach. You accept and understand the process of midlife crisis and what the psychological process of infidelity and midlife crisis both, so that you can be more accepting of it. Because it doesn't mean it's going to change his behavior at this point. He's going to follow that through. Your being calm can't help him because you aren't being reactive and giving him something to react against. But when I say that, it doesn't mean, okay, do this with the agenda of I'm pulling him through his crisis. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. He has to go through it. Just like cookies have to bake in 9 to 12 minutes. They're not done in 6. Doesn't matter that you want them. They're going to be doughy. They're not going to work out. You might get sick from the eggs. Okay, I am going to move on to question 3. Let's look at our time. Okay. We have Cass. Cass's bomb drop is September 2021. She has a clinging boomerang, date of marriage 2012. She has a clinging boomerang and a high energy replayer. She says, I believe I have a clinging boomerang. He began his affair in August of 2021. I found out in November, in which he said it was over and wanted to work on things. Okay. So yeah, that's right there. We're looking at clinging boomerang type of behaviors. It was never over. Again, normal. It was never over. The affair was never over. And he hadn't moved out at that point. Fast forward to early January when I got a bomb drop number 4 and he moved out. Okay, now, first thing, there's one bomb drop. And I say that because if you keep thinking it is feeling like it's a bomb drop, that's your lack of detachment and emotions, and it feels like another bomb. But it's just a continuation of a long crisis. And if you're going to define everything as a bomb drop, you're defining everything as shocking. And then it just destroyed me again. It destroyed me again. It destroyed me again. I don't want you to feel like a bomb dropped with every little thing. And they're big little things, I know. It happens in a midlife crisis. Chuck left 8 times. I got 1 bomb drop, even though he left 8. I didn't get 8. So I want you to work on that right there. That's an indicator that you're not yet accepting of the crisis and the magnitude of what that means, the destruction that is going to be ongoing for a while. ML Sears do move out. Pretty much. I don't guarantee that because we have some that haven't. But ML Sears leave. So he hadn't left until January. He tells that he lives in one place. He tells us he lives in one place, but in reality, he's living with the alienator. He messages me daily. In the last month, he comes over daily to see our kids or just talk for half an hour. His mother had a midlife crisis and left as a vanisher for 2 years, and so they divorced. Her behavior was and is and still is similar with my father-in-law, so how she behaves with him. So she was only a vanisher for 2 years, mother, MSC's mom. But similar with my father-in-law and my husband and our family. She comes and goes as she pleases, runs and pops back in when she feels guilty. My father-in-law is very kind to her and accepts that's how she is. I'm struggling with setting boundaries with a clinging boom. Now, this is interesting. There's I think a typo here, but it's very fitting, given that we're looking at mom and son. So if you meant to do it this way, it was smart. I'm struggling with setting boundaries with a cloning boomerang, even though she vanished, but I liked that. It was interesting. Cloning boomerang. And my kids. Of course, I want him to be here and not with his alienator. I need guidance on boundaries with kids and a clinging boomerang. So there's a few things with boundaries. You are really early into this crisis. I know that sucks. Sorry. You're really early in. I want strong boundaries, but the time for the strongest boundaries is later. When I see what's going on here, if I didn't know about this and I just knew, if all of this were a vacuum, there weren't time around it, but it was just an affair, I would say, okay, you need to go no contact. You need to set really strong boundaries. He can't come over to the house. You need to stop this messaging me daily. Now, that might not mean he stops messaging you, but you don't respond to him. Okay. He comes over daily to see the kids. I would say, no, you're not allowed to. Now, that is something I would definitely do later on as well. I am not convinced that that is something you should do right now. What I do think you need to do is it needs to be curbed and put back. So he messages you daily, don't respond to them. Or don't respond to all of them. Respond to maybe one. And only if it needs to. If it doesn't need to be responded to, don't. If he says, I'm going to be late dropping the kids off, you might not need to say anything, or you can say, thank you for letting me know. Neutral, professional. Okay. He messages you daily in the last minute, comes over daily to see the kids, or just talk. You need to be busy, and you need to tell him, you know what, you want to see the kids, you need to do it on some other time. I don't want it to be a boundary yet. I want him to be encouraged to have time with the kids, to do things with the kids. But this is still cake eating. Excuse me. But it's not a high level of cake eating. He's taking tastes of cake. What it gets to, and this isn't a bad or good thing, it's just what happens. Cake eating gets worse so that they think that I can do anything. And now they're trying to do more than just chat with you. They're trying to live with you. They're trying to, have sex with you, whatever, while having it with that other person, while going to that other person's place where they live, those sort of things. They want to have the best of both worlds. They may even use that exact phrase, I want the best of both worlds. It's a Madonna whore complex sometimes, where they might not want the sex with you, but they want all the other perks. They want a wife in the kitchen and a whore in the bedroom. So later on, you put much stricter boundaries on this. Right now, I still want you building some levels of reassurance with him, though. And that means I want him reassured that you're not going anywhere, that I'm doing this for our marriage, that I don't expect that, if he ever brings it up, you don't have to initiate the word divorce, but if he does, that's not what I want. I'm not going to do it. I don't think it's the right choice. He comes to you and says he wants one. No, that's not how these things work. That's what I actually said. I said, that's not how these things work. Or if he makes a comment about, yeah, I don't want a divorce, you're just going to divorce me, or something like that. Then you say, that isn't my plan. I have no plans to do that. Our marriage is too important. Our children are too important. I don't approve of what you're doing. And when I say that you are not, you shouldn't come over here, it's because your behavior is damaging to us. And having you keep coming back, we're having trouble healing. So I want you to give some reasons that are reassurances to him as to why you're setting even these mild, soft boundaries. Because he's going to be afraid. He may monster and get angry. And the reason he does that is he wants you to take down the boundaries. Do it and let him do whatever. It's not going to work that way. So I want you to say, if he does monster, because you set a boundary, oh, okay, he did it. Not bad news, I can't hold to the boundary because I'm too weak to hold it. It's check it off as though, yep, that's something typical. He didn't accept my boundary. He doesn't want to follow my boundary. Of course he doesn't want to follow the boundary. Just because we set a boundary, we don't mean we expect that they will follow. In fact, I often expect they will try to break it. It's our job to hold the line. And you want him, of course, you want him to be here and not with his alienator, but if you know enough about MLC, it's not going to happen like that. He is not even a year in to a process that is going to probably be 3 years at the lowest. And really, 3 years is when they're ready to start being ready, kind of thing. Chuck was 3.5 years. And then that was when he came home and I left because I said, we can't go, no bed hopping. So I left him to take care of my grandma. And it was another 6 to 9 months before we were actually full time in the same house. He came home. He left her October and I let him come home at Thanksgiving. And I came home for permanent August 1st, 2008, and that had been 2009, and it would have been October when he left her in 2008. So that was the period of he was home, but not with me, other than me coming home every other weekend and then for extended visits to go through counseling. And of course, that was our way of working back to get back together. It's going to be a long road from where you are right now. And he's going to be with the alienator. So we don't want him that way, but there's nothing we can do about it. You've got to let that train wreck itself. Let the Titanic sink, all those things, okay? And you focus on what you can do, and you be the best you can. You be a lighthouse. That's also going to help bring conflict into their relationship. And it's good for you. Not the conflict, I mean, but being the best you can. Being strong, being empowered, being that attractive force. Because the attractive force is going to keep looking back at you. And that's why there will be conflict over there. but you're doing it because it's good for you and good for your children in a healthy way. Okay, number 4, we have an anonymous female left behind and forward moving spouse. Bomb drop was June of 2020. Date of marriage, I think she means 1999. 2099 is probably not quite as accurate. That makes sense. Okay. She has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. She says, how does monster get triggered? Is it perceived threat versus a real threat? I notice that my husband monsters a lot when he feels somewhat threatened, whether it's fear, jealousy, or things he can't control, like who I spend my time with. He has a lot of issues with my friends, who he calls bitches, and seems to not like me maintaining a relationship with mutual friends. It seems I'm not allowed a life, yet he doesn't want to be part of my life. Is it his fear of loss, or fear or loss of reputation or face? Often, monster will be triggered by me going out. I don't talk to people about us. I go out to forget about my problems for a few hours. He seems most happy when he knows I'm at home with the kids, though he chose to leave. Sometimes I get monster via text in the middle of the night while I'm asleep that I only read in the morning. Some of the things he accuses me of make no sense. Comments like, I know you've moved on, or having fun tonight, doing X, Y, and Z, etc. Is it best to set boundaries or just ignore? I would ignore. So why does he do these things? He's afraid. He wants a backup plan. And I don't mean that in a bad way right now. I mean, it sounds terrible, but like, I just want you to wait there for me while I go out and sow my oats and just be the good person. You know, they do have that expectation. They know that you don't sell that to somebody. I'm going to go out and do a lot of sinning, and I just want you to stay put because that's what you should do. They know that saying that isn't appropriate and not something. There's the double standard going on. But it is their fantasy. They want to have their security blanket available if this new life fades. And he's so afraid when he looks back that she's not going to be there. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And that will just send him further cascading down. So that it's a big fear. They have that fear of abandonment. I might as well abandon because I don't want to be abandoned. So the person with the fear of abandonment often abandons first. He has that. And he's so afraid you won't be there, and he wants you to be there. He wants you waiting on the sidelines. He wants a cheerleader, but he really is afraid that when he gets through this, you won't be there. His security blanket won't be there. And maybe it's true. I don't know. I don't know where you are as a standard in that. But when he complains about your friends, well, yeah, they're probably encouraging you to not be in it with him, that sort of thing. There's the divorce is contagious. A lot of times the woman going through divorce gets new divorced friends, or they start to encourage them. You know, a group of divorced friends and a married woman comes into it, that friendship group, there's a better odds that she is going to become divorced. It's terrible that these things happen. So he's afraid of those. He's afraid of what other people are telling you because he knows that he is not being a good spouse. He knows it would serve him right, type of thing. And he's so afraid that you really are going to leave him based on his own behavior. So hold on. And yeah, he's happy when you're home with the kids because you're not going anywhere. He knows where you are. That's safe for you. Okay. Okay. Eye problem. Sorry. I want you to, it's not so much as ignoring as being aware of it. And sometimes when he says something, you can say something back. I don't want you to get defensive in an arguing manner. There are times when it's okay to vent. But if you get defensive in a reactive arguing manner, you're just adding to the conflict. So your responses are just, you know what? Sorry you feel that way. If it's about feelings. You know what? I went out. Too bad. I'm sorry that scares you. But I do have a life. And if he ever says he's so afraid of you going out and finding somebody else, you can do a few things with that. You can reassure him you're just not into that. You can also scare him because he really is scared of it. Say, I have no intention of doing that. But you're not here right now. And it sounds to me like it really scares you that I will find someone else. Well, what do you think? A woman alone. What do you think happens? Right now, I'm not looking, but what happens when I'm more ready? And notice how I spoke calmly about it. I was just trying to make it rational. It was a rational discussion, not a snarky fear. What do you think I'm going to do? Of course, dumbass. It's not that. I want you to be calm when you speak. That's also going to, you're rooting it in empathy because it is a fear of his. It sounds to me like you're really afraid of being alone, or you're afraid that you've gone off and you're doing this life and you're afraid that you're making mistakes and that when you make them, they can't be undone, or there's not somebody to help you through them. There's not going to be somebody to pick the burrs out of you. And you want that to be my job. You want me there as a safety net. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be back there as a safety net, but I'm going to be here. And I'm not going to be your safety net. I will be the one who gives you a helping hand. And this is what it looks like. It looks like somebody who cheers you on. My helping hand is the helping hand of somebody who believes that you can do it. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not going to rescue you. But I will be by your side when truly needed. Not needy, but needed. And that's what you have to find ways to communicate with him. Other than that, I don't want you to give energy to his fears. You just look at him and say, yeah, I guess I went out. I needed to have a night out. You know, and that's, you can't throw it back. You go out all the time. But, you know, are you worried that I'm going to find somebody? Because I'm not looking. And not only am I not looking, I have enough barriers up that I don't want to find right now. And he's going to interpret that how he wants. He's going to let him be afraid, and he has to be. Okay, we're going to move on to number 5. And we have Marianne. Marianne's bomb drop was January of 2020, and her date of marriage is 2007. She has a boomerang. It can be clingy. And high energy replayer. She says, my ex-husband came by for the first time in a very long time. It had been maybe a year. He came by the 1st of January, telling me that he broke up with his girlfriend because he was missing me. They had a fight. He hasn't contacted me since, though, other than to congratulate me for my birthday. He's now living with the girlfriend and her 4 or 2 children. He's not sure. She's not sure if it's 4 or 2. He has bought a new big family car, and I understand he's doing well. I've noticed that whenever a big change was at hand, or when he was having some argument with his girlfriend, he'd reach out to me. I wonder if it was just out of fear. Yeah, that's out of fear that you're not going to be there. Remember that security blanket. I heard you say that in Escape and Avoid, they don't work on themselves. But he was in therapy for over a year working on himself while still displaying all the typical MLC behaviors. So the question, you put 2 things together that don't necessarily go together. You said he was in therapy, and you said working on himself. Being in therapy, I'm glad. Because the fact that he continued to go is something. But being in therapy doesn't mean he's working on himself. He might just be going through the motions, which is most likely. He's not working on himself. He's still avoiding, but he might still be getting it. He could either be enabled by the therapy or validated, and so it might not be helpful, or it is. It's still doing something for him. I don't know. I like that he's going, but it doesn't have to mean that he is not in an MLC because he's working on himself. Where's his insight? I know that he's been concerned, but he's concerned about how you'll feel about him, how you look at him, things like that. Because of all he's doing, he's thinking Marianne's gonna have, she can't see me as that same kind of equal anymore. Does this mean that he's not an MLC? No, it doesn't. Do none of them work on themselves? Before, we're talking Escape and Avoid, before they get to a point, because there's a point where they're going to come through it, and the work on themselves can be after, then the work on themselves in preparation for ending MLC as well. But they still can come through broken. So some of them will work on themselves at a low level, but still lacking insight as well. You're going to really look at whether they have insight. I'm going to see him at his youngest son's dance performance next weekend. His son doesn't want the ex-girlfriend. The son doesn't want the girlfriend to come. Do you have any tips for me when seeing him? Be calm, be light, be happy. But happy, remember, I said calm and happy, so it's not bubbly and like, bouncing off the walls. It's not hyper. That's me. And so sometimes it was hard for me not to be hyper because I am normally bouncing off the walls. Well, I tend to be very hyper, so I want you to be very calm. But the purpose of it is really so that you're emotionally on an even keel. Be cordial, have a chat with him, and you've been very good at having a good connection with him. So it doesn't seem to me that you've had a forced connection or a feeling of things being forced. You might feel awkward and nervous, and that's okay. You both feel that. But he's going to want to talk to you because he seems to always do that way. And if he doesn't, it's just in a different cycle. I don't want you to read into it because you've been reading into, oh, well, I think he's going to become a vanisher now. And then he didn't so much become a vanisher, but he was probably just busy. And then he keeps coming back to you. He comes back to you when he has this codependent need because there's a fight. Does that make you second choice or not? I don't think so. I'm sure there could be. Sorry, the contact is really got one fuzzy eye. I don't think that I think he sees you as his more solid force. And you're pleasant to be around. And he's been clingy boomerang with you. He wants you there. It's not second best, even if they think that. But I don't think that's what they're doing. He's like, I just need to have her at least as my friend. Well, why do you need to have somebody at least as your friend? That's a security right there. And maybe his life is going fine with a girlfriend, but think about this. He apparently broke up with her in January. It's only mid-March now. And he has bought a car, a family car. He didn't need a family car. So clearly it's for that family. So he went from, I miss Marianne, is probably some of it. I broke up with her. And then a few months later, he's buying a large investment that is a family investment for being with that person that he had previously been broken up with. He's not stable. You say, and he's doing very well now. Well, it's only been a few weeks. It's really only been a few weeks since the start of the year. And since the start of the year, all of these different things have happened. Okay, so I want you to think about those things, and I want you to go in very calm. If you can do some sort of a mindfulness right before you know you're going to see him, do it. Like, you're going to see him in 15 minutes, and you're not in the car driving unless somebody else is doing the driving. Do a meditation. Okay? Okay, we are going to move on. I don't know how many we're going to get to because we're on number 6. Now, this one is going to be a little bit hard to read because I had to edit it. It was just a giant list, so it wasn't in sentence and paragraph form. We have Heidi. Heidi's bomb drop was March of 2020, and her date of marriage is 2000. And Heidi is not familiar with either contact type or energy level terms yet. We have a son who is 16 and a son who's 19. He didn't work, so MLCR didn't work for the first 20 years. I did everything. I had a lot of money out of me too. So does that mean he took money out of me? I didn't know what out of me meant. Okay. So he didn't work for the first 20 years. And I'm going to, okay. Just the one comment. We're trying to do a lot of things together. He said there's no one else. It's been on eggshells since June of 2020. He left midnight, the 4th of June of that year, 2020. A year of telling me that there was no one else but cycling. New Year's, he told me of the alienator. So New Year's 2020 or New Year's 2021? Because we went from June. Oh, a year of telling me there's nobody else. So that gets us to June of 2021. So this past New Year's, He told you about the alienator. They broke up, and that they broke up numerous times. Is that what he told you? Or they've broke up numerous times since New Year's, which has only been a few weeks ago, really, on that kind of a scale. But either way, either one is possible. Cycled. He wanted to marry her October of 2021, but she was married already. I've tried, now I don't know what GOFL is. I looked up as an acronym, and I just got guffawing or giggling on the floor loudly. So I don't know what it is, but I've tried to be GOFL and your pies. And for those who don't know, pies are physical, intellectual, what's the E, and spiritual. What is that E there? Emotional. Okay, and you can find them at Marriage Helpers with Dr. Joe Beam. Because I've talked about similar things, but I haven't written up something structured as that, and that's a really great resource. I only reply to him, so you're not initiating anything. Our sons avoid him. He apologized October of 2021. He didn't know how to fix it. He went a bit distant then in November of 2021. Then he wanted to keep meeting in December, and we had a nice Christmas. He bonded with the sons. 2 days later, he told about alienator number 2. Now he's vanished. There's no financial help. Gave me some each, cycled from June 2021. So maybe gave you financial help back then. How do I work with somebody who's now a vanisher? I know to work on me. My sons are cross that they let their guard down. So cross they let their guard down. Is the second alienator and now a new limerick, or is it a fresh, healthy relationship? He gets funny about money. Says if I chase it up, I'll get less, but forgets all the time. Has he totally forgotten us? So he's speaking out of his butt. I mean, if I chase money up, he gets funny about money. If I chase it, in other words, if you, and I don't mean this, if you pressure, I don't mean pressure like the things we do to pressure them to come back or that sort of thing, but if you push it, if you press it, in other words, if you go to court and say, I'm going to get my fair share, and you have to fight for the fairness of these things, he will make sure to backlash on you, double down on, and it's vengeful. It's because you were not being nice to me and giving in, I'm going to make you pay. That's what that is. I'll get less. But then he forgets all the time. And has he truly forgotten us? No. I mean, you've got somebody who has been cycling, you've said, and in and out, but he's in a midlife crisis. Is this new alienator a fresh, healthy relationship? Why would it be? Fresh is just something new. But healthy, why would it be? He is clearly a broken man. He is in a midlife crisis. He has a wife and sons in the background. So right there, it's not a healthy relationship. He may not be honest about his relationship and honest about his life. But we can look at it and say that's an affair. What makes it, why would it be legitimate? Because he left you 2 years ago and he's having it? No, that wouldn't make it legitimate. Or not an affair in the sense of infidelity. It would sometimes, and there are times when it wouldn't. If you both have separated but the divorce isn't in process, I mean, the divorce hasn't been finalized, but you have a mutually agreed, even if one of you didn't want it at one point, but the consciously uncoupling, that sort of thing, you're both okay. And you're dating because you're not standing and you're not trying to be married, then it might not be infidelity, but he's got a standing spouse and he pretty much does know it. You might not know these terms and things. They might not know them, but they can see that their spouse is still there. And to the point that they can be labeling you as their husband or wife. It's probably a new limerent affair. More likely. Now you said, though, that he broke up with the first alienator. So no matter what, it's an affair. I want you to take solace in that. I know that's weird. And then let it go so that you can focus on yourself instead of focusing on what that means and what it is. Focus on your own healing, because that's how you're going to get through this, and you're going to be a lighthouse for him. Okay, let me know if you have any more questions on that. Since my eyes are going really funny, and now since one eye is funny, I just haven't had a chance to correct the contacts. I'm having more trouble concentrating on it. So let me know if I have any more pieces that you want me to answer in it, and I'm going to move on to number 7. Okay, and this, we've got 7, 8, 9, and 10. This might be the last one. We'll see how long this one takes. Okay, so we have Amanda. Amanda's bomb drop was July of 2021. Date of marriage is 2009. She has a boomerang and a high energy replayer. She says, I was wondering if there was an easier way to look at contact type when you have younger kids. Our kids are 7 and 9. He keeps insisting he's leaving our marriage, not our kids. Now, we hear that all the time. I left you, not them. Really, because you don't live at the house and they do. Yeah, whatever. But he's emotionally checked out in the time that he has them every other weekend. It looks like babysitting more than parenting or even fun. So it can go both ways. You could be Disneyland dad, but he's probably depressed, so it's not Disneyland dad. Or uncle, he's more like Uncle Daddy. And yeah, it is like babysitting. I've found, and it's not universal, but a lot of times men have that attitude of, oh, my wife can't be here, I have to babysit my kids. Chuck has that. He lives with us. Or married. They're, daddy and mommy are together. But I've got to check with him, and it does feel like babysitting. Like he's watching the kids. My mom, when she's visited, she says, I tried to defer or let him. And one time she just says, I guess I should have just, taken over and been more firm with the kids or taken over. And she said, and I said, yeah, you should. Because he's just not going to. He will always just sit back and he's got a babysitting attitude. Yeah, it gets annoying. Oh, goddess of fun and light. Oh, I like that. By Senator wife. Okay. Goddess of fun and light. See, when I looked up all the acronyms, I didn't find that one. In fact, I found some weird stuff. And plus, did you spell golf wrong? No, I didn't spell golf wrong. Okay, let's look more on this question. Let's see. But because of the kids, we do have more contact, yes. Contact about me is usually minimal and surface at the kid exchanges. So you're right, that's boomerang. I just haven't been sure how contact type is influenced with kids or if those points don't count. Not really. Also wondering if you have any advice on dealing with this with the kids. There's a limited object who's already divorced her husband and sold her home living with him, except for the nights he has the kids. So far, that boundary has been respected. I go through your info and it's obviously a midlife crisis, but I feel so overwhelmed when I look at how recent bomb drop was and how far ahead, if ever, my real husband will come out. So when it comes, I'm going to go and get, you joined the email list in January and at the end of December. So you may have seen the blog post because it's still the most recent blog post since most of my live new content is always these lives. So I put the link here so that I can give it to you in the comments. So this is the latest blog post. It is how do you determine the contact types in a midlife crisis. So I just wanted to give more information on that. And so I created a video on that. Not sure if I made it more confusing because I might have made it more complex. But one of the things, and let me get these here paste this so that I can focus on talking. There and there. Okay. So is the idea of clinging, boomerang, and everybody gets confused on the idea because they want to say, well, mine would be this if it weren't for. They go for the but for. Now here's the thing. None of us know what it would be if it weren't for the kids. And that's usually what it is. If it weren't for the kids, he'd be a vanisher. We don't know that. Sometimes the kids can be a convenient excuse, but he is staying more aloof. He has a wall built up and he's maintaining that wall. So the clinging term is, it's really, we have boomerang, off and on, and vanisher. And clinging is a type of boomerang. Could you have a clinging vanisher? I don't think that you would have a clinging vanisher because they wouldn't be able to stay vanished. But you could have, but Could you have a clinging off and on? Very rare, but I have seen some that when they do start to have, say, touch and goes, those are clinging events. And then they might withdraw again. Now, why? Sometimes it's because there's an active alienator and there are rules. When you are going to be my boyfriend or girlfriend, you will have your cell phone on a leash. You will not be allowed to call her. You will not be allowed to think about her or talk about her. And so they just can't get away. And there's a lot of emotional blackmail in there, but they are afraid sometimes, or just trying to please that person, that sensitive affair down partner. So sometimes they will follow the rules and they are highly controlled. And that might be why. When it was Chuck and he was living with the alienator, first it was called me, and then as the years, as it proceeded, first he would call, and I think, well, this isn't a few years, but he would use his cell phone, then erase the history. But then I think she would check the phone and go through it, because you can find those. Finally, he started leaving when he could. He'd sneak out and he'd call me from a payphone. There were more payphones around back then, too. And so that was pretty interesting. And of course, with caller ID, I knew he wasn't calling from his cell phone. So sometimes he would just sneak away with his phone to call. And so when he had the payphone type of thing, I get the sense that she was there and he needed to get away. But he could have gone to a payphone and she could have been at work, so it wasn't sneaking away, but just making sure to use a payphone because he didn't have a phone he could check. So she couldn't check any logs. So he went to many ends to call me, even when there wasn't a big reason to call me. But that is an obstacle to calling me. And not being texted. I mean, we had email. He could have done that. Texting, we had text, but my dad finally said, can you not text so much? Because the only phone I had and ever have had was during those 3 years where my dad gave me a phone. So didn't text much. But he's not clinging. Clinging means there's an emotional connection. And it's just a type of boomerang. But in general, the contact types are, think of them as very strict about frequency of contact, not about what the contact means emotionally, not about any connection. And why? Really, because that's first thing how we can do it in a scientific manner. I can say, oh, this person contacted 5 times in 2 months. So every other week. That's pretty regularly. Versus this person contacted once in 2 months. That's pretty infrequent, but you have contact. And this person contacted once in a year. That last one was a vanisher. And it might have been a very neutral type of contact. The one who contacted all the time, well, they contacted because they were missing me, or did they contact because they had reasons to contact, not they made up reasons to contact missing me, but they had, we work together and we share a business. We have kids together. We have to do kid exchanges, that sort of thing. Clinging boomerangs have a greater emotional connection and neediness. It's a needy connection often. There's they may be more codependent. There is an attachment. And remember how I talk about detachment is important. They are still maintaining that attachment to you. It doesn't mean the other person isn't detached. They could be attached with more anger as well. So why then with kids do we call it, he's still a boomerang? It's because you have more opportunity also though. The benefit of a boomerang over and off and on is opportunity. You can still start showing your healing. They see your progress, even though they're not really trying to pay attention to you. And they are trying to be indifferent. But they still get glimpses of your successes and your joy in life. And then they see, well, life is being destroyed and that person is not only sick, she's thriving. Why? What secret does that person have? It's still an attractive force. Sure, somebody who with a clinging boomerang has an even better odds. But opportunity is still a better odd than not having opportunity. I'm not a fan of no contact. There are good times you should use it. But one of the reasons is, how are you going to reconcile if you don't have contact? Really? Is that a marriage? They live there and never talk to me, and I live there. That's a neighbor. Or that's somebody that lives in the same city. Your spouse? you have to have contact with them. So the more you have contact, it's about influence and opportunity. But it really is, we just measure it. And sure, we could say it's a subjective measuring in the sense of, well, how did you say it was an off? Where's the cross between the line between off and on and boomerang? That's where I say, well, you're kind of close to, you're a little bit of both. You're close to the line. That's a subjective territory, but really it's about frequency, and the more you have, the better. Okay, we are at 3 o'clock, and I have to get ready to get the kids in a little bit. Plus, I have a parent conference, and Peyton in kindergarten is so excited because the children are leading the parent-teacher conferences and giving a presentation. So we're very excited about that. And I will see all of you next week. Thanks, and have a great week. Bye-bye.